Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
Hey, this is Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast, here to help you make the most of your summer with Michelob Ultra, a superior light beer worth playing for. Play for it with the guys when you're competing to see who can sink more birdies on the golf course, because winning tastes even better with Ultra on the line. Play for Ultra. Fill your fridge with Michelob Ultra this summer. Enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2025 Anheuser-Busch Michelob Ultra Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
Welcome to the New Books Network.
I'm Chris Holmes, and this is Burned by Books. Here you'll find interviews with writers you already love, like Jennifer Egan and Rebecca Mackay, mixed in with up-and-coming voices like Alexandra Kleeman and Rumaan Alam. You'll find us wherever you listen to podcasts, but check out previous episodes at burnedbybooks.com and on Instagram and Twitter at burnedbybooks. Let's start the show. If you are familiar with the work of Colum McCann, and many of you will be from his national award-winning novel, Let the Great World Spin, then you understand that what a new novel by McCann has in store for the reader is a sense of deep history and time, acted out in a well-maneuvered plot and told in lyrical language that stuns and lasts. Those expectations will not be dashed with McCann's latest, Twist, a deep water novel about the systems that carry our deluge of information across the internet and the lines of power and oppression that those systems follow and remake. In Twist, we follow Anthony Fennell, an Irish novelist on assignment to profile the lives of a crew that fixes the cables that lie across the ocean floor and which carry all the data that runs the web. In South Africa, Fennell will meet John Conway, a fellow Irishman with, quote, missing years from his life, an expert in locating broken cables in the deepest oceans and in the worst weather imaginable. Fennell's experience with the perils of this labor and with Conway himself, a figure of uncanny self-assurance and calm, open him up to a vision of neo-colonial roots of information that outsource human emotion, compassion, ingenuity, and even freedom to companies that keep the cables straight without a twist. As is possible only in the best novels, Twist keeps its attention tight on the pathos of individuals while providing a scale of feeling and thinking that seems capable of encompassing the world, its climate, its interwoven histories, and its unplumbed depths. To say I love this novel would be a disservice to the experience I had, which was love, despair, suspense, laughter, and often simple gratefulness for McCann's ability to render impossible problems into the most beautiful language. Colum McCann is the author of 8 novels, 3 collections of stories, and 2 works of nonfiction. Born and raised in Dublin, Ireland, he has been the recipient of many international honors, including the U.S. National Book Award, the International Dublin Literary Prize, a Chevalier des Arts et Lettres from the French government, election to the Irish Arts Academy, several European awards, the 2010 Best Foreign Novel Award in China, and an Oscar nomination. In 2017, he was elected to the American Academy of Arts. His work has been published in over 40 languages. He is the president and co-founder of the nonprofit global story exchange Narrative 4, and he lives in New York with his wife Allison and their family. Welcome to Burned by Books, Colum.
Chris, what an amazing and generous introduction. Thank you so much.
I feel very lucky to get to talk to you about this novel. I really did feel like it was kind of all encompassing in the way that, the oceans are. But I want to know what took you to the bottom of the ocean for this latest, and how did the cables come on your radar? There's something that remain invisible to most of us, and clearly you've researched the hell out of them.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I have been to the depths, and I have been back, and I, like everyone else, just a couple of years ago, assumed that everything I wrote on my computer or sent on my, through text and whatever, flew up in it celestially somehow into the air and into some vast cloud that lives way above us, until I was brought firmly back down to Earth when I found out that over 95% of the world's intercontinental information travels in very tiny tubes, no bigger than a garden hose, snake and slake their way across the very, very bottom of our oceans down in the abyssal depths. So our voices, even right now, are going across the floors of what T.S. Eliot would have called the silent seas. And I was stunned by this, completely stunned. And so I embarked on a novel to try and evoke what that means, what it meant, and what it will continue to mean for us, which is really about communication and lack of communication.
I truly learned of this fact from your novel. I had assumed that there was an ethereal cloud, or at least a satellite that was holding all this, and it sort of blew my mind a little bit.
Well, the thing is, the cloud lives under the sea, and we didn't know that, or I certainly didn't know that. And it's rather beautiful in a way. It's kind of mysterious because it goes to the part of our planet that we know the actual least about. We know more about our stars and the heavenly bodies that surround us than we do about those canyons and those cliffs and those crags that are way underneath. And so it was amazing to me that we had to have people to go out and repair these things, because when there are underwater landslides or underwater volcanoes or sabotage or fishing trawlers dragging too long or even sharks taking a nibble, it's people, people just like you and me have got to go out there and spend weeks and weeks and weeks on end, sometimes looking for a needle in a haystack because it's been buried under tons of debris. And I thought, what an amazing story for today. It's an original story. It's a sea story. It's a search story. It's a mystery person story, but it speaks to exactly who we are and how disconnected we are in our connection at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Twist brings together the stories of two of the most intense and volatile forces in our lives, the oceans and internet connectivity, or the failure of such. As you describe it, the noise of all the data running through the cables on the ocean floor is in stark contrast to the infinite quiet of the deep ocean. What was interesting to you, both formally and in, the actual fact of the quiet of the ocean, of that dissonance?
Formerly, I was interested in the notion of repair. This all happened to me just after I'd written a novel called A Paragon, and the pandemic came out just as the book came out. And I had to think to myself, what's going on here? And what am I going to write about? And I thought, well, I'm going to have to write eventually about healing and this notion of healing. And then I thought, well, it's going to also be about repair because, we went through an epidemic of loneliness and isolation, particularly our young people. And how do we get back to any sort of idea of our original place? And then I found this boat that went out from South Africa, a boat called the Leon Tevenen, which I have fictionalized in the novel. And I got in touch with them and I went out for a few days, on the seas, and I was taken by the very fact that the internet is not just these waves around us in the air, but there's hardware there. There's Kevlar, there's copper, there's these tiny little fiberglass wires, no bigger than your eyelash that carry billions of pulses of light per second. And it just seemed to me so gorgeous and foreign and unbelievable that I was shocked that nobody had really written about it in fiction before. There'd been some good nonfiction books, of course. But I wanted to capture a story, a love story, a story of disruption, a story of loss, a story of sabotage at the same time too. And that's where I went.
You reference a Hebrew term, tikkun olam. I'm probably saying that completely wrong,
No.
which is a story of repair. And I wonder how that sort of came into your thinking about repair and what we do to repair unrepairable things.
Yeah, it's an interesting notion, of healing the world. The necessity that we have to go out there and to heal the world. It happens in lots of cultures. There's the Japanese concept of kintsugis rather, where you take these shattered things and you make them even more beautiful by putting them together with gold and silver and other things. But it strikes me that if these are the shattered times, we've always had shattered times, whether it be 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago. But now we're in the exponentially shattering times. So it's happening faster and faster and faster. And the piece that you pick up, the shattered piece that you and I pick up to try and fix ourselves, suddenly shatters again in our hands. And it's almost like this weird Borgesian notion that like everything is turning to shatter, 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 shatter. And how do we hold ourselves together? Part of it is our own relationship to information, disinformation, the way we trade ourselves on the internet, and the way we allow the people behind the curtain, quite frankly. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but there are people behind the curtain squirting shoots of dopamine down our brains every time we do a click after another click. And we have to be aware of all that stuff. So to me, it was a great story about today and also about tomorrow.
The novel is preoccupied with how the cables are reenacting, rebuilding systems of imperial power. And a quote from the novel, "The old cables following the colonial roots." There is a powerful tension between the supposed infinite openness of the internet and the power grab and the suppression of thoughts and the stealing of attention by the companies and countries that control how those routes are made. And I wonder if you'd talk a little bit about the contrast between what we think of as the fundamental openness of information on the internet and the way that sort of those old colonial roots enact, power inequities and other kinds of restrictions.
Well, that's beautifully said. F. Scott Fitzgerald said quite a while ago, he said, the essence of intelligence is the ability to hold two contradictory ideas in the palms of your hand at the exact same time. A lot of scientists have spoken to this as well, including Niels Bohr and people like that, saying that at the far end of one fundamental truth is perhaps another truth, which is equally true, although in perfect opposition to the original truth. And so, and to try and unpack that, I would say, look, what is technology evil, or is technology good, or is it both? And can we sort of like hold these opposing ideas at the same time? Is the way that we allow ourselves to be owned by these corporations, is it good, or can we actually use the information that we put out there on the internet to, create some sort of fundamental movement toward goodness? There are all these things. There are all these several plates spinning in the air at the exact same time. And the disease of our times is that we don't allow ourselves to be multifaceted or multitudinous. We don't allow ourselves to say, oh, there are several truths, at least two very profound truths going on at the exact same time. If we could do that, I do believe we would be better politically, socially, morally, in terms of talking with one another and thinking about one another. And that's one of the themes of the novel.
Would you be willing to read a section of Twist? that brings us straight into the cable metaphorically and imagines all that they carry.
Absolutely. This is a scene where the narrator, Anthony Fennell, is down in South Africa, but he's monitoring probably climate change, which is causing the Congo River to swell, burst its banks, and eventually cause a landslide, which causes the cable in turn to snap. Now, there are a number of ones and zeros and binary codes going on here. I'll only read one or two of them because I don't want to be saying ones and zeros till the cows come home. But there you go. 2,000 miles north of us, the Congo swelled, a hypnotic flume. There was no taming it. Huge whirlpools studded the surface. Pirogues were sucked under. Giant barges were sent in a complicated dance. Birds perched on floating timbers. They could travel faster on the river than they could through the air. Down below, the turbulence gathered. The Congo had unrecognized depths. All the things we didn't know. All the things we were doing to ourselves. The manner in which we broke one another. The riverbed deepened. More soil was swept out to sea. What was it Zanele had said? One little breath of our history is ruining us forever. Even the tiniest speck mattered. Shelves of soil and dirt and debris were fired along toward the edge of the underwater canyon. The soil accumulated, shelf upon shelf. More rain, more sediment, more nutrients, more plants, more trees, more garbage. Millions of tons of accumulation. At the mouth of the river, the tide came in and the tide went out. The banks burst again. Nothing, not even words, can stop the flow of time. Things break. Nobody I talked to ever knew the precise point at which it was triggered. All of it took place so far underwater, and most of the sensors were destroyed in the flood, but it was January and the enormous slide began, an avalanche, an underwater punch to the back of the brain, rupturing the eardrums of whatever was there to hear it, an 800-kilometer slide that could have destroyed anything in its path, passing through the underwater gorges, beyond the jagged cliffs, over the drowned ridges, the bluffs, the crags, the caves. A huge flood then, beneath the sea, and a break in the cable. It was already designed for sway, large loops of it given over to the possibility, but it was stretched to the end point, and who knows what it was that the cable was carrying at the time? All the love notes, all the algorithms, all the financial dealings, the solicitations, the prescriptions, the solutions, the insinuations, the theories, the chess games, the sea charts, the histories, the contracts, the divorce papers, the computer hacks, the wild lies, the voices, the terror, the nonsense, the known, the unknown, the promises, the porn, the alphabet of flesh, the sing-song of skin, the million wisps of disinformation, the flotsam of our longings, the jetsam of our truths, all of it, all suspended in a series of wet tubes at the bottom of the ocean floor. And who could tell what was traveling through it at the exact point of snap? Say it was you, or say it was me, or say it was Zanele, a thought that began with a neuron in her brain, sparking other neurons, gathering, multiplying, traveling from her cerebral cortex, through her spine, through her fingers, through her keyboard, through the circuit board, into electrical pulses, 01, 00, 10, 01, 00, 10, 00, 00, and out again through her building, down a manhole, beneath a street in London or in Brighton, in pulsating packets of light to Dorset or Cornwall, and all the way across the English Channel, codes of light at billions of times per second, past France, past Spain, past Portugal, past the Canaries, past Cape Verde and Ivory Coast and Ghana and Cameroon and Gabon, until it met the flood, that speck of dust, the thing that tipped it over, and the cable was already wildly stretched, encased by a massive torrent of mud and history, and then suddenly it all just stopped. The cable snapped, and there must have been, at that moment, a tiny leak out of light, into the surrounding darkness her message to Conway to say, I love you. Or then again, maybe not.
Not all meals are created equal. For instance, breakfast has the spicy egg McMuffin for a limited time, and lunch doesn't. McDonald's breakfast comes first. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
How do you top your love for your cat? With a cascade of decadent, savory gravy over a mouth-watering mousse pate. Fancy Feast gems. 2 gourmet pâtés in one convenient pack. Simply peel and plate to reveal a pyramid shape that makes eating delightful and pamper her with an experience as extraordinary as she is. Turn the everyday into the extraordinary with Fancy Feast gems.
That was beautiful. Thank you. I think that's it's such a beautiful example of the work that you do in this novel, making visible the things that are invisible to us about what we give over to this series of cables and perhaps what is lost. I wonder, have you read the very recent memoir Careless People by Sarah Wynne Williams?
I've heard of it and I've been meaning to read it. And I think it probably refers to all those careless people like in the Great Gatsby that sort of come in and have a breath in your life and then are gone and then ruin things all around them. I assume that's it, isn't it?
That's it. Yeah, exactly. And it's just such an indictment of the way that, Facebook in particular, but social media companies have treated exactly all of this humanness that's just in visceral ways and in tender ways and ways that embarrass us, but carries some sense of us. And it's, I think what we get at in Twist is, what's lost by giving it over.
Right. That and so much of it. In fact, it's funny that the echo of The Great Gatsby is there because, I have a narrator who is a little bit Nick Carraway, and he's trying to very much help the world around us, and it's quite in my younger, more vulnerable years, my father said to me, but it is that same sort of tone. And he's also in pursuit of a man who is mysterious and also a man who's, wrapped up in a sort of love affair that he can't really quite understand. So there are lots of echoes that were going on there. For me, there's also the echo of The Heart of Darkness, and then there's the echo of T.S. Eliot's love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. But what was I trying to get at? I mean, most of the time, honest man, writers don't know what it is that they're doing. They're just going by the seat of your pants, and then, brilliant people like you come along afterwards and make sense of it for us. And, that's what our readers do. I mean, you think about why we're talking about books, about being singed and burned by books. Well, we are because they sort of reignite us and they fire us in all sorts of like spectacular ways. And, a writer doesn't generally know what he, she, or they are doing at first, but we hope that the reader is the one who comes along and finishes it for us. But, there are certain things that are on your mind about, say, technology, engagement, politics, all of those things that are going on around us.
Well, I want to hear you draw out a little bit more, the more purposeful allusions to Conrad's Heart of Darkness and even Apocalypse Now is here. And I find it most pregnant with John Conway and his descent into the heart of darkness, only this time below, and his, shall we say it, going native to the sea and turning against the very network that he's employed to preserve. How does Heart of Darkness work its way through Conway's DNA?
That's really interesting because, Heart of Darkness is there, but I wasn't trying to map Heart of Darkness. I wasn't trying to rewrite Heart of Dark. This story was entirely its own story. And yet I know that we get our voice from the voices of others. It's impossible to spring up fully formed. So those things that I read when I was a child, those things that I read last week, those things that I will read a few months from now are the things that will make me up. Now, if I was too conscious about rewriting Heart of Darkness, I think I would have had handcuffed myself in certain ways. But I knew that there were echoes there, and what you just said about him, going downward is the first time, because this book is still new to me. I'm still talking about it in a new way. I'm still discovering things about it. I was aware that we were talking about colonialism. I was aware that I was talking about digital colonialism, neo-colonialism, these colonial routes that are almost exactly followed. The slave trading routes and the colonial routes are almost exactly followed by today's cables, which is, truly sort of bizarre. It might be functional, yes, because that's the way it always has been, but it's also bizarre. And guess what? Everything that we put down those cables, everything that they have access to, they also own the hardware. And so when we're talking about nationalism, when we're talking about nation building, when we're talking about corporate colonialism, I don't want to sound fruity or like out there in sort of some sort of crazy way, but I do believe that we've got to start thinking about this in, really powerfully engaged ways, so that we know how we are being owned and who it is that owns our information. And is it enough to say, okay, let them have it, or do we fight back against it, at least intellectually? And maybe it creates some engagement, because here's the thing. Fundamentally, the problem is that we are communicating, but we're cut off by our own communication, and we don't know each other well enough. So how can we use this in order to know each other better?
I love that. You couldn't get more of a kind of impactful colonial site than South Africa in many ways, with its doubled colonial history. And that's where, when we're on land in the novel, we spend much of our time in Cape Town in South Africa. And it is a place that, as you say, it gives us a sense of how that fight might have happened in the past and may happen in the future if we choose to see this kind of neo-colonialism in those same terms. And I wonder what was important to you about South Africa being our setting when we're on land.
Well, South Africa was accidental in certain ways, and yet nothing is an accident. We're always led to these places, I think, because, there's a magnetic attraction to the fundamental stories. Yes, the boat went out of Cape Town, and so I wanted to go to Cape Town. But when I got to South Africa and I began to look around as a person who has, experienced colonialism growing up, in Ireland and seeing it, operate upon my country, and yet now feeling that we've sort of escaped, those notions, and now they maybe even guiltily being part of it, because I'm a white middle-aged male, and I'm going down to this part of the world, and it's, there's all sorts of things going on, and it's, there's fantastic energy and there's enlightenment, and yet there's also, a system of apartheid that is apartheid unto itself. It's all these mirror images that are going on. So for me, my brain was going off in all sorts of ways when I went there. And then obviously the cable breaks off the west coast of Africa, just off the Congo River. Right. And a lot of the novel takes place, in Ghana and on this boat, and also Alexandria, Egypt. But it's an Irish novel as well too. It's a world novel, and and it's two Irishmen who are very disparate to one another, and they end up being sort of very mysteriously engaged with one another. And this repair that I was looking for, I was looking for so much repair, and yet I was led to sabotage. And then out of the sabotage came some form of healing for me. I do feel that this novel is one of my darkest, and it goes really quite like physically dark down to the abyss alone. It finds that little chink of light that I think is absolutely necessary for us to keep going on.
Conway's partner Zanele is enigmatic, to say the least, and I think even to Conway, as you say, he can't quite figure it out. And I thought maybe his interest in having in having Fennell write the article about her rather than him was maybe to be able to figure out something more about his love. But she's fascinating because she speaks in these, truth-bearing aphorisms.
Yes.
And diagnoses, in particular, the failure of our moment as spending too much time on the surface.
Right.
And, we see then the echo of this in Conway's diving below the surface. But this could be read a number of ways. The surface of the land and ignoring the depths of the ocean, where plastic has done its work of colonizing even the deepest trenches. It can be read as the surface nature of our information, the surface nature of our connectivity with one another. And it also calls out the invisibility of the ways in which our life is structured by infrastructure and labor that goes into keeping all those things working.
Yes.
And I wonder if you'd talk about how surface and depth work here, and also talk a little bit about Zanele and how she functions for Conway as this thing that both keeps him together, but also is something that he finds deeply enigmatic.
Yeah, and thank you so much. And Zanele is a South African actress. She grew up in the townships near Port Elizabeth, which is now renamed. And she is a powerhouse. At one stage in the novel, she wears a shirt that says "unreachable by machine." She goes to London with a theater troupe to do Samuel Beckett's "Waiting for Godot." Beckett had famously said at one stage that Godot was not to be played by women. And he
Fascinating. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he said it as an sort of offhand comment. And when asked why, he said, "Well, women don't have prostates," and referring to the fact that they'd have to stay on the stage for so long. It was a bizarre comment from a very brilliant man, and she forgives him this strange comment. But the Beckett estate does not allow women, still to this day, to play the roles in Waiting for Godot. But she,
oh my goodness,
as a Black South African woman, she decides that she is going to go to London. Wow. And she's going to put this on. Now, I don't think it gives too much away to say she gets attacked. This attack happens while her partner is out at sea repairing the very cables that have ruptured between London and Cape Town. So all of this, I mean, yes, I don't want to, harp on too much about the metaphorical, instincts here and everything. But, at a certain stage, you do have to stand up for your ideas. You do have to say, a lot of this, even though your characters led you to new places. Like Nabokov says his characters are his galley slaves, and he can make them do whatever he wants them to do. That's Nabokov. God bless him. In a million years, my characters lead me away, lead me astray, lead me in all sorts of different directions. Zanele was really interesting to me, and she remains mysterious. And part of this novel, maybe the literary intention of the novel is that I wanted to have an aftertaste. It doesn't solve things for us. You won't wake up, after reading it on, Friday night and Saturday morning, you think, oh, that was about this, this, and this. You're more likely to think, well, what in the world was that? And I think thatness is really important because we are living in a culture that is so diseased with certainty, and everything has been down and knocked away. And I love the idea of opening our lungs to mystery. Most of us are mysterious to one another. Most of our days are actually filled with this unknowingness, but it's human and it's beautiful and it's full of love stories and engagement and compassion and sacrifice and all of these different things.
Oh, wow. I love that. And I have to say, I'm a partisan of your vision of character over Nabokov's, even though Nabokov lived in about 10 different houses within a mile of me in Ithaca.
Oh, wow. Beautiful.
Yeah. And I have a friend who inhabits the memorial office of his in Cornell, which is quite a thing.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, it's sort of an alternative underground railroad, right? It's another one going on. Yeah. What part of the world do you live in?
Well, yeah, it's beautiful and very cold.
Rainy too. It's rainier than Ireland, I believe.
I think that's right. Yeah, and yeah, well, I mean, everywhere right now feels about the same, which is vi-
Doesn't-
vibrating with with nervousness. But
Yes. And we are all sort of like shell shocked and trying to figure this out, and we're anxious and like looking for some sort of voice to come along and bring some cohesion to it all.
yeah,
And does that happen in literature? Not necessarily. I mean, Nabokov or Nabokov. How do I pronounce it, by the way? What's the
I
proper
I
way?
think it's Nabokov, but I've heard it both ways so many times that it's both.
But I think he offered like an incredibly alternate vision and one that was even in the darkest of times was laced with humor and hope and a sense of possibility. In fact, if you look at all the literary essays of people who say have won major prizes, especially the Nobel Prize for Literature, I never even talked about this before, but if you read their essays, from Heaney down to Pinter to Beckett, to Faulkner, to Toni Morrison, you will see that there is a current that says there that we must look for a chink of the light in the darkness, that it is available to us and it's often available to us through the act and the art of proper storytelling and language engagement. It's
That's such an important thing to remind us of right now. And it perfectly cues up my next question, which was this moment of kind of meta-narrativity in the beginning of part 2, where Fennell is narrating and writes, it is, I suppose, the job of the teller to rearrange the scattered pieces of a story so that they conform to some sort of coherence. Between fact and fiction lie memory and imagination. Within memory and imagination lies our desire to capture at least some essence of the truth, which is, at best, messy. There's something very powerful going on here having to do with, I think, what you're really just getting at now, this relationship between storytelling and truth, even when that's fictionalized storytelling and truth-telling, and the ways that we crave coherence. And right now, it seems we reach to the kind of the oracle of the internet, which claims to have truth telling, and yet this book seems to call us back to a different kind of storytelling. So were you thinking about that, and can you talk about this narrative moment for us?
Vitamin Water Zero Sugar has great taste, zero BS, and obviously zero sugar. For those with zero room in their calendar, zero patience for slow walkers, those who get 0 hours of sleep on a Saturday night, have zero filter, zero given, and zero interest in grabbing a plain, boring water. Grab a delicious Vitamin Water Zero Sugar today.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
Yes. I think it's really important, and I think you put it really extraordinarily well. But if I go back, say, 170 years, and I go back to one of our great figures in American literature, and you'll know who it is the minute I even start to intone some of his lines. Do I contradict myself? Very well, then I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes. As you know, that's Walt Whitman. At the same time that Whitman was operating, we have Emily Dickinson, telling it slant. She's getting at the truth, but she's getting at it in a slant way. One of the beautiful things about that particular moment in history and that time was it was rife with possibility. Yes, there were horrible things occurring. There were civil wars. There was horrible racism. There was all sorts of things that were going on. But there was a narrative sense of hope and possibility to a multitudinous aspect. in these particular times that we have now, we should have access to every possible multitudinous angle. We should be so much more than one thing. And yet we, or the internet, or the men behind the curtain, want us to be only one thing. It drives me bananas. We are so much more than one thing. I'm so much more than Irish. I'm so much more than all of these different things that are going on around that I can be labeled. Edward Said, the great Palestinian thinker, philosopher, writer, talked about how important it was to escape the monolithic idea of a people, and to be so much more than this one thing. We'd be so much better in these days of the internet, when we should be allowed this multitudinousness to go back 170 years ago, when we were actually really truly believing in it.
I'm struck that you have a line in the novel. I'm going to quote it wrong or badly, but it's a conversation with Fennell, and I think one of the crew members talking about wanting whether he wants to go home, and perhaps he says, which home? Is that right?
That's correct.
And that makes me think of exactly what you're talking about, the multitudes of the things that we can call home and embrace as a kind of home. And maybe that is Zanele as a home. Maybe that is Cape Town as a home. Maybe that is Ireland as a home.
Yes.
And I wanted to hear you talk about homeland a little bit at a time when that is so on our minds, with violence around homelands. Yeah.
One of the great stories of the 21st century, which happens, by the way, to be one of the most and least human of our times. Because we have great discoveries in science, great discoveries in art, and then these terrible things that are going on at the same time, including these forced migrations, these ideas of what is home, where is home, who is home, on a personal level. I live in New York, and when I say I'm going home, that means I'm going home to Dublin, Ireland. When I'm in Dublin and I say I'm going home, it means I'm going back to New York. I'm in two places. I'm a man of two countries. I got my hand in the dark pockets of each of them. I'm happy to be so. But what about those displaced people? I think about them all the time, sort of floating in an elsewhere, and not a good elsewhere. I mean, elsewhere can be a really beautiful, beautiful place, but those people who are cursed to wander and keep going until they can find some form of home, and then when they get there, they're always going to be longing for that other home and that they came from. And part of the whole 21st century condition is being able to name what home is, or to be comfortable with what home happens to be. And if we can carry the numerous parts of ourselves, well and good. But right now, we're surrendering so much of our character to singular ideas that belong to political parties, because we're not as stupid as our political parties want us to be.
God, I hope not. I really hope not.
Yeah, but we get reduced to that. I can be purple, I can be blue most of the time, but I can have conservative ideas and still hold those things. My God, I want to listen to people across the divides. I mean, I have an organization called Narrative 4 that I co-founded, where we bring young people together to tell stories to one another across divides, across borders, across boundaries. You step into my shoes, I step into yours. I recognize suddenly that we are both human. Does that sound sort of sentimental, silly, banal, naive? I don't care.
Yeah, that's essential. It's essential. Anthony Bourdain said near the end of his life that if you could do anything, you need to keep moving and keep being in other people's shoes, and for God's sakes, eat their food, because you'll change the way that you perceive them as, foreign, stranger, or home, or love.
Thank you. And I would say the exact same thing and salute him in what he says, except I would say dwell in their stories.
Mm-hmm. Well, on that note, before I let you go, Colum, I would love to hear a little bit about what you've been reading and loving recently.
I have this crazy book that I've been reading that I adore, that I never read before, and I could have read And I knew about it from the age of 5 or 6. And I've known about it in different iterations all the way up to the infamous 60, which I just turned. So I've known this story for 50 plus years, and I haven't read it, but I finally just read it. It's Frankenstein.
Oh, amazing.
By Mary Shelley. And what freaking book. It's unbelievable.
It sure is.
To our times. I didn't know how gorgeously beautiful it was written at, what it creates and what it has created. And of course, Frankenstein is the monster, but he's the scientist, is Dr. Frankenstein. And he creates this first benevolent monster, and the monster then turns because the monster is not treated properly. And guess, of course, the political analogies here are just, they're ringing high and hard here. There's so many good books. There's lots of good books from young Irish writers, especially young women writers who come along, who are doing like phenomenal things with language. I always love the work of Kevin Barry and Sebastian Barry and people like that, and Claire Louise Bennett, and there's Claire Keegan. Oh my gosh, Claire Keegan.
Oh yeah.
The other one that I really loved recently was One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This.
Oh, I haven't read that yet.
It's tough. It's tough. It's powerful. It's brave. It's one that you won't shake off very easily. It's Omar El Akkad, and I think it's a howl for our time. And there's a bit of the Whitman-esque in that too. So there's so much good stuff going on. I'm looking for the light. Always looking for the light.
Yeah, and I'm now going to be thinking about that chink and that lets the light in.
Yeah,
and
that's going. Going. There's a crack. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets through.
Well, this has been just wonderful to get a chance to talk to you, and these are great recommendations. But Twist is such a beautiful addition to your growing canon. I loved it much as Let the Great World Spin, which is something because that book has lasted with me. And I want people to run out to their independent bookstore and get a copy of Twist, and then have a chance to listen to our conversation.
Fantastic. I had such an amazing time. Thank you for all your time and everything that you do.
Thank you so much. Well, that's all from me for now. My thanks to Colum McCann for coming on to talk about his latest novel, Twist. You can find links to purchase Twist and all of Colum's recommended books at the website, burnedbybooks.com. There you'll find all of our previous episodes, links to buy a podcast t-shirt, and ways to get in contact. As you listen, take a moment to rate the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. And if you'd like more information about Colum McCann's nonprofit, Narrative 4, I'll have a link to that organization on the website as well. Until next time, this has been Burned by Books.